Hello and welcome to a very new show called Behind the Tactics Board with Jamie Harrison and myself, Stuart Beeho. This is a new show that we want to create for coaches, players, parents, for anybody interested in football. And we're going to be talking about ourselves, our experience, our knowledge, and hopefully we can share all these experiences with yourselves to help everybody get better at developing football players and developing our own knowledge. So a little bit about us. We've got a combined experience of over 40 years, gone from youth football to adult football, grassroots, junior Premier League, from all sorts of age ranges, from under fives all the way up to the adult football. So we've got a vast experience and vast knowledge of all types of levels.
I've got my A licence and Advanced Youth Award, previous experience of working as academy manager, and currently I work as a head of coaching for a junior Premier League centre.
I'm currently a UEFA B licensed coach. I work for the junior Premier League team, and I also work at a pre-academy for an academy club as well. Coming up on the show, we're going to be looking at how we can deal with poor behaviours in a football session. So Jamie, how's your week been?
Yeah, it's been brilliant. So this week we've got the video camera out and we've mic'd up some of our coaches so they can film their session and then watch it back themselves, so they evaluate themselves, and also for me to give feedback in order to maybe identify things that they're doing well and identify things that they could be improving on. So that's been great. We've got a couple of sessions filmed this week, which we'll go through with the coaches. Also outside of football, I've been taking my three boys to kickboxing. So we're trying to do something different from football to get them into multi-sports to help with their coordination, balance, and also to build confidence and to learn new skills. And it's been brilliant. The tutor, the teacher we have at the kickboxing has been excellent. I've been listening, learning a lot of how he controls a group of boisterous boys and girls, and how that can, how I can transfer. And I have actually transferred some of that into when I've taken the under 8s this week. I've actually found myself talking a bit calmer and how I deliver not only the football message but the life skills messages as well to these young players. So normally on this show I'll be talking about my failures in order to help the viewers shortcut their way to being a more successful coach and delivering a real good practice. But I've had a pretty good week with I took an under 15 session because you were away. So I've taken an under 15 session and I thought it was really high intensity. So at our junior Premier League centre we work to a syllabus which has a 6-week cycle, and this week we're looking at defending the goal. So there's a few things I did I was quite pleased with myself about. One was I stole a session off of Josh. So I've observed what Josh did previously in the previous cycle of the syllabus, when he did defending the goal, and I thought it was an excellent session. So straight away I took what he did and I thought it was brilliant, replicated it and just added my own bits to it. So that's an easy shortcut to save time, but also know that the session that you put on is going to be of real quality.
So you mentioned at the start of the session about getting high intensity. So was that something you were able to implement from the start, or was that something that you had to get going during the session?
Yeah, so I had a couple of tricks with that one. So I'll just quickly show you what the practice was. Very simple one. It was, my drawing's terrible, I'm sorry. A 30-yard pitch in length, split in half with goals at each end. Goalkeeper in each. And we had 14 players we were working with. So we had 5 were locked in one half with one attacker. Now this was done on purpose. You could score from anywhere, and the idea of having a real small pitch is you're 30 yards out, you can score from anywhere on the pitch or anywhere as a threat. We were looking at defending the goal, so we need to get high pressure on the ball. The initial setup was a 5v1 in order to frustrate the boys at the back. So whenever this player had the ball, it's going to be very difficult for this lone striker to get across and block the shots. So there's quite often, if they can switch the ball across, these guys can't come out yet to close down, so they're getting frustrated they're getting, they really want to close down that gap because they're just watching this player keep putting it in the top corner. And the quality of the session of the finishing was excellent. And then we eventually progressed to having 2 attackers, v4 at the back, 4v2 locked in this half. Again, you can apply a score from anywhere. You've got a little bit more pressure on the ball, but still, if the ball's been worked over that side, these guys are still frustrated that they can't come out. So that was done on purpose, because then they can see, right, this is how I'm failing at this task, because I'm not able to close that distance. He's got a chance to just get a free shot. So then we progressed it to then allow one of these players to step out, whoever's in line of the goal closest to the ball. So when the ball switched across and this striker can't affect the player on the ball, the nearest man in line of the goal would step out to close down the ball as quickly as he can. The players behind would then slide across to cover the gap that this player left. So from frustrating them early on, we let that go for a couple of minutes at the start where they couldn't get out. They could clearly see that they wanted to go do it themselves. So that got that intensity straight away. So at the start we had, you can score from anywhere. And then I noticed that when it did go into the striker, he had 2 yards to get his head up and finish. Now that's a crime inside the penalty box. So I then stopped the condition of you can score from anywhere, and they could only score when in the attacking half, because I wanted to replicate that situation time and time again. So that meant every time the Reds had the ball, they had to play into the attacker. Then it was the coaching points of, if you're close to the ball, it's really, really high intensity, get closed down, be aggressive, other people cover. And so from adding that small twist on the game, of whoever it went, it must go into the attacker, then nearest man closes, other players, defenders cover. That got that intensity.
So did you find that you were doing anything different as a coach to help add that intensity? Because you've got a game there, but when it's finishing and defending, then that can naturally have that high intensity. But did you notice anything that you did to make sure that those standards were there, the high intensity was there throughout?
Yeah, so one was the small little tweaks and the conditions I put on the game. The other was just the use of my voice. So with some practices, you might be a little bit quieter. With this, where you need that intensity, you probably saw if you observed the session that I didn't shut up. I was quite vocal. I was driving the energy. So let's say if the ball did come over here, I would be encouraging the striker, close down, just using my voice a little bit louder, myself using that energy and intensity in how I'm delivering to get that into the players, and they react to that, because at this age, under 15s, and the level that we're delivering at, they can switch off sometimes. So they can think, oh, my job's done. I can just walk and watch this guy shoot. But if you, come on, Bobby, get there, then you just suddenly gets that extra yard of energy to close down, and that's how we got the intensity. So through the condition of the games, and letting them fail, but also then the use of my voice to get them moving as quickly as possible.
I suppose you've got that natural cycle then. If you can encourage the defender to be pressing quicker and making sure their standards are higher, then the striker's got to do something to react to try and get that reward of getting that goal. So then he's got to be higher. So the defender also stopping him again. So you can encourage that a bit more.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that is exactly what happened. So we've never seen the under-15s play and finish as well as they did. So the defending was 10 times better than it has ever, and there were some fantastic blocks, covering, pressing on the ball when they should have done, stepping out at the right time. That was all brilliant, and our focus was on the defending. But because it was so good, the attacking play was so sharp, and there were some fantastic goals scored. And then next week, we'll use the same practice again, but then next week we're focusing on finishing the attack. So we're still looking at the defending in the background, but then we'll be focusing more on the coaching detail of how how the strikers move, how we support the play, how we finish it, how we finish off the attack.
So what else have you been doing with Zaleto this week?
So we've filmed some sessions of an A-licensed coach, Mark Challen, who has his own coaching company called M1 Coaching. He works with the under-18s at Yeovil Town and also the under-13s at Exeter City Academy. And we went out there to film a technical small group session just to see what an A licence session looks like.
So why was it good to go and film someone like Mark? Because obviously you said Mark's got some really good credentials already. So why is it a good opportunity to go and see him, and what are you going to observe from him compared to somebody else?
Yeah, so one was the sessions he puts on. So we'll add those to YouTube of some excellent small games that he did in order to improve movement, receiving, passing. But not only that, it was just to observe how an A licensed coach delivers and the small details they think about in order to make the session better.
So what is the good detail of a training session?
Yeah, so what we observed from Mark was just the small things that help the flow of the session. So things like knowing where he's going to put the footballs. Yeah, so it's a small detail, and it's something that they do deliver on the A licence. It's one of the ticks that you need to get in order to pass the qualification, is the organisation of the session. So where are the footballs in order so then they can be fed on really quickly, so the intensity of the session can stay high. You're only using one ball and then you have to search for another one. He's got a pile of balls ready to feed in to keep the boys working for the set period that he wants to. Then there's the placement of the cones, very carefully designed session for the whole hour of, right, we're going to move from that practice to that practice, and this is the cone I'm going to take away. So there's minimal setup. So once you set it up, that's it. Then it's just a case of removing the orange cones, and then you're straight into, there's very little downtime between each practice and each drill.
So was there anything else you took away from this session?
Yeah, so not only did the organisation flow really nicely, the practices he designed from the start to the finish complemented each other. So by the time they got into their small-sided game at the end, the passing practice that they worked on earlier on in the session showed up in the small-sided game, and there was a lot of repetition and a lot of opportunity for that 1-2 or an overs to appear again, and for the players to try and do that. It's quite often a coach might do a passing practice and then move into a game and it's completely unlinked. So then what he did, he went from an unopposed practice so the boys could get used to the technique, and then gradually progressed the pressure from partial pressure into full pressure in a small-sided game to really improve that small aspect that they wanted to work on.
So did he still have the same pictures of unopposed right away throughout the whole session?
Yeah.
So nothing really changed, not from like a passing exercise here and a totally different passing exercise there. It was the same patterns throughout, was it?
Yeah, so even just a very small focus as well on how he can play around the corner. So it would show unopposed how that would look and the technique of that, but then gradually build up that pressure, so you've got a partial pressure from a partial defender coming in, so you can feel that pressure and play around the corner. And then he put that into a game situation, a little 2v2, where you're forced to use that technique.
And what were the group of boys he was working with?
So there's a collection of individuals that have contacted him for this extra technical session, and it's obvious from observing the connection he has with these players. So before the session, before they can get on the Astro, all the way through into after, the connection he has, and that's really important.
So why is it so important for a coach to have that type of connection with the players?
So this is also what set him apart, was by having that strong relationship and knowing each individual really well, he was able then to set the standards at a high level. He knew when each player dipped below that level, and he would encourage them to make sure they maintain that high standard. I'm quite guilty of this, that I have done in the past, where I haven't built that relationship with a player yet, and I always want a very high standard in my sessions, and high intensity, high standard, and it angers me when a player doesn't perform how they should. But my problem has been on occasions where I've tried to push that with a player that I haven't had that relationship with yet. So then in the end they look at you funny thinking, well, who are you? Who are you to be saying this to me? So that's where I've got a little bit ahead of myself, where I needed to build that relationship, spend a little bit more time with the player and that connection, so he feels comfortable with me and secure with me, in order to sort of realise that actually this guy who's chatting to me is doing it for the best intentions. He wants me to be the best I can be, rather than thinking, who's this guy? He's, you know, who is he to talk to me? When you have got that connection with a player, then they can see that that you're saying these things for a reason.
So do you find that having that connection with players, one, it allows you to push those boundaries, not boundaries, those limits for work rate, intensity, to say, come on, you can do it. And then it builds that trust as well, that he thinks, well, if he says I can, maybe I can do it. And it helps to develop that player just that little bit more every time.
Definitely. So, like you said, that trust, they know that when you're talking to them, you're doing it for the right reasons. As coaches, we want our players to be the best they can be, but also it's our job as coaches, as teachers, as parents, to see the best that this kid could be. So sometimes they can't see it themselves, but we can see it, and that's up to us to push each individual in the right way and at the right time, in order to fulfill their potential.
So there's a lot of talk about environment as well, and having a good environment for players, and one thing I always believe in is making sure that the players come along and enjoy the environment that they're going to learn in. Would you say that that's the same terminology as a connection with a player, or would you say having the right environment is something a bit different than having the right connection to a player?
Yeah, so from the Advanced Youth Award, they talk about security. So when a player feels secure in their environment, they can excel more. They feel more comfortable. If they're always on edge, their game will reflect that. Yeah, so I think the environment and connection goes hand in hand. So if you can provide a secure place for these kids to be, to enjoy their football, because sometimes this is the only place that they can get to escape their life. Yeah, so it's really important as part of that relationship to have a secure, fun and caring environment. Once they know they have that, then I believe that they will grow and blossom. When I talk about fun, sometimes people think about just having a joke and that, which is part of it, but also fun for footballers, really pushing themselves with their effort, their running. And that was something that clearly came across from Mark's session with the players. He already had that relationship. They knew they were secure. They could have that fun element, but every single one of them, they put 100% effort in. And that's where the other side of fun comes from, is that knowing that they gave their all during that session. And whenever they slipped below the standard, Mark was there to pick them back up again and remind them of what they're capable of. Also just noticing those small technical details of where their first touch goes, where they're passing, and then the speed of their pass. If ever it was below the standard that they normally demonstrate, Mark was on them, in a good way. And that really got the intensity and the standard of the session high throughout. And those players worked hard. So we look at, did they have fun through working hard? Did they sweat? And did they learn something? And they achieved all those things in that session. So Stuart, with your under 15s, what have you been doing with them on a match day?
So we've noticed in previous weeks that our possession is not where it needs to be. It breaks down quite quickly if we're trying to build our attacking play. Could be just after one or two passes, it's just a bit of decision making, breaks down, and we just lose the ball very, very easily. So we've tried something a little bit different on a match day. We said, right, we're going to forget the scoreline, and we're just going to be focusing on our passing. So we started off by saying, if you can make 5 passes, you get yourself a point. It's something that everybody does at training, and it works really, really well. It was a bit interesting. So when I said about it in the change room before the match, bearing in mind these are under 15s, that their body language was a bit, They didn't, so I was a bit worried about how they're going to take it on board, because like I say, everyone does it at training and they sort of go through the motions, so to speak, but it's part of training. To do this on match day needed to be a buy-in from them, and so as soon as I said it, I could see there was a bit of a. So I said, look, we're just going to have a bit of fun with it, don't worry about anything else, and we'll see how it goes. So we started off, and the biggest buy-in was the players who didn't start, because it gave them something to do as well. So I had one player looking at the opposition, I had one player looking at the scores, and he had someone else working with him as well. So after the first 20 minutes, we only had 5 points. But during that time...
So what were those points for?
Oh, to complete at least 5 passes.
So every time they got 5, they got a point, yeah.
So the guys who were marking the score, after a little while, they were actually shouting encouragement, because they were like, oh, we're on 3, 4. And then they started making a few passes. And it wasn't until the team came off and we spoke about it, and we said, right, in the first 20 minutes you've only got so many points, and a few of them were like not really taking into it, not really having that buy-in, but a few of them were going, oh okay, and we spoke about it, and that was what our little team talk was going, well, when we have scored those points, when we have made that success, whereabouts were we on the pitch? Oh, we got to the halfway line. Okay, so we made 5 passes from our keeper and we've got further up the pitch. And we're like, oh, okay. So it was like a little bit of a shift in their mentality of going, well, if we keep the ball, we're probably going to be in a better place on the pitch. Rather than just going like in training where you get 2 players in the corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, we've got a point. But they've actually progressed up the pitch. So we made some changes, and in the next 20 minutes, I think we doubled our points. And there was people on the sideline giving more encouragement, going, we've got 6 points, we've got 7 points. And even you saw and you could hear and see the players on the pitch actually buying into it that little bit more, because they were getting further up the pitch. So all of a sudden our attackers were getting on the ball in the opposition half and not just our half. And so then we're going, oh, we're getting the ball higher at the pitch. And again, after 20 minutes, the first thing they said when we came off was, what was our score? Not what the score of the game was, and I can't remember what the score was whether we might have been 0-0 in that 20 minutes, doesn't matter. But we got more points in the previous quarter. So we spoke about it a bit more, and we progressed again in the third quarter. And at the end of the game, we spoke about the whole aspect of just keeping the ball, and they were all positive. We lost the game by 1 or 2 goals, but we walked off, and I think we've got around 15, 16 points altogether, and they were like they'd just won the game, because they kept the ball so well. They realised not just keeping the ball, that they had success by a scoreline, by keeping hold of the points, but then they saw the outcome of going, well, every time we kept the ball, after a while we were getting up to here. So then we moved on to the latter part of the game, and moving to going forward in the following weeks is, right, now we're getting the ball into certain areas, making sure we're playing forward. We're not just retaining the ball, we're looking to play forward, we're trying to make that penetrating pass. But then when we're trying to do that, how good's our first touch? Because we need to make sure we've got runners going off and trying to get through the pitch again. So having that little aspect of just going 5 passes, get yourself a point, changed the whole dynamic for the whole game. How we've gone from struggling to keep hold of the ball for 1 or 2 passes to actually being the better team possession-wise over 80 minutes. It was absolutely fantastic to see.
Yeah, brilliant. I actually watched that game as well, and it was noticeable. The players were excited to come over during the break of each period to then see how many points they achieved through the passing, and I didn't expect that with that age group, but they really bought into it, and like I said, they were excited to see, oh, did we make progress? And you found that they actually did throughout the game by focusing on that process of passing the ball better. How did it compare to the previous week then? Was the overall performance better that way?
Definitely better from the keeping hold of the possession of the ball. The previous week we try and play out, we try and play through the thirds. We've got a style that we want to try and work on, but we wasn't getting any success. And unfortunately, the previous week was one of our weakest that we've seen recently. Where the ball was getting into wide areas into our own half, but then it was just a bad decision making. You were just losing it far too easily. And then to have this big shift of going, right, we're going to keep the ball and playing it up through was absolutely fantastic. And we played a top team. Like I say, we lost, but they literally walked off laughing, smiling, and a few of the guys going, as soon as this clicks, we're going to be destroying people. And to have a few weeks of not been going too well, to just this one little change, and then walking off thinking that they're world champions. You know, they not once did they think about what the actual scoreline was. It was, we've kept the ball well, we progressed up the pitch, we're playing good football, and we're enjoying it.
Brilliant.
And you can't really ask for much more than that.
So it was clear there's been a big improvement since the previous week. Now the problem with setting this kind of challenge is to put 5 passes together, as you said, in training, everyone could stand real close to each other and get their quick passes in. What did you observe maybe in a negative way by trying to put this 5-pass condition on? 5-pass aim on?
Yeah. So it's just where people might be a little bit more safe with the pass. They might be getting into a position where really they should be playing forward and making that penetrative pass, or trying to be a bit clever to see if we can get it into the attacker third. And they might just go, I'm just going to keep the ball just to get a point. So they might go, well, I'm going to play to the opposite, their teammate in centre field, or they might go, well, I'm going to play it to the centre back, and just making that retained pass rather than playing forward. So there was a little bit of a trade-off with that, because I thought, well, again, previous weeks we would have just lost the ball. Now they're at a level we're going, if they're not 100% sure or confident, well, at least they can retain. So it's not where we want to go, but at least we're keeping the ball.
It was a big step forward, wasn't it? And they definitely kept the ball more than ever I've seen them do this season. The problem was a little bit, now they kept the ball for longer, which meant we had to defend less. Now, part of the problem was they're playing a little bit too safe. So if we split the pitches into A, B, C and D, quite often they were making the same passes sideways in zone A. So now what are you going to do next in order to progress on? So we've had good success, they've improved. How are we now going to progress from A to B to C to D? What are you going to do next with them?
So we can say we still have the point scheme, but we can say if you can make a pass from A to B, that could be worth 2.
Love that, yeah, good.
So then we're going to have that. We can have 1 point for keeping the ball, because at the end of the day we still need to retain.
Yeah.
We don't want to be forced on anything and make a step back. But then we can have that a bit more success and a bit more reward going, well, if you can make that pass, you know, we'll give you an extra point for that. If we can see a very clever pass maybe going into the C channel, well, maybe we'll give you a bit more. We won't necessarily go all the way from A to D. If it's on, possibly, but at the same time we're trying to build our play. So if we can go from A to B, get yourself 2 points. If you can make a very clever pass from a centre back to a right midfielder, and it's in successful touch, and we can play off it, maybe we'll give you a 3-pointers for that.
That's brilliant. I love that. So you're going to try that this weekend?
Yes, we are, yeah.
Good stuff. So you're a UEFA B licensed coach. You also got your FA Youth Award. Apart from the football coaching courses, how else do you develop yourself as a coach?
Try and read a few articles online, but I mainly listen to some podcasts.
Is there anything you're listening to at the moment that you would recommend?
I'm a big fan of the High Performance podcast, Jake Humphreys. For me, there's so many sort of lessons within the podcast that have always been taken away. So the podcast itself, it's an interview with different people from all over the world, of different walks of life, businessmen, actors, sports people.
I've seen the one with Johnny Wilkinson. I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
Is there any other guests that you've listened to that you thought were really good to benefit your coaching?
Yeah, there was Dan Carter. I thought was fantastic. There was Adam Peaty, Adam Peaty's coach Mel. They were absolutely fantastic. To be honest with you, they're all brilliant. They're all. It's a real clever intake of having an insight of what people for high performance of how they go about their own life to try and either be an elite sports person or business person, or what they do just to try and make sure that they're pushing themselves forward.
Could you pick one message that you've taken away recently?
There was one about world-class basics, how to have your standards of your basic what your basic principles are of you as a person, but making sure they're the best that they can be. I think that was a very struck home with me, going, oh, if you could build these fantastic world-class basics, then everything else is going to have that high standards that we spoke about before. It's really, really going to be pushing on, because if you have your foundations are not strong enough, then how are you going to build anything on top of it?
Yeah, so I've actually had a discussion with one of our players recently about this, of Xavi, the midfielder, now manager of Barcelona, but he was one of the best players in the world, one of the best midfielders ever to play, and nothing was really that extravagant most of the time. Everything was quite a simple pass, but he executed it superbly, world class. His first touch, his pass, the small detail he put on his passing was world class. Quite often people think that in order to be world class you have to be someone like Messi and beat 10 players. Well, no, someone executing a 10-yard pass to a very high standard nearly 100% of the time, between 90 to 100% of the time, they're operating at a world class level. So what I was trying to encourage my players to do, probably passing at 40% success rate, is how can we get that up? Just focus on, instead of hitting that 50-yard diagonal showstopper pass, can you just pass to a midfielder? So instead of hitting that Hollywood ball 50-yard pass, can you keep feeding the wing back? Therefore your team can keep possession for a bit longer, and then your team can move up the pitch and have controlled possession in the attacking half. What the Hollywood ball of 50-yard diagonal looks like for this centre midfielder, 1 time out of 10 it might come off and it looks brilliant. The other 9 times out of 10 that you're trying it, you're giving the ball away. So just focus on the world-class basics of, can I keep feeding my teammate? And we found, just for that small little focus of finding a 10-yard pass, he looked very, very good. His level of performance looked much improved, but also the team's level improved. So the wing-back was now getting the ball more, and he was showing the wing-back could get on it more and show what he was capable of. So is there one show in particular that you would recommend our listeners go and listen to this week?
So that one with the world-class basics was from Sir Ian McGeechan. Just his whole personality came across as a fantastic coach, fantastic person. And also just the sound bites of when he speaks about other players, he has that connection that we spoke about before, that environment he creates.
Brilliant.
And that bond he does have with players. It's not the coach player, it's we're a team, and they're all in it. And I've watched some British Lions footage from the past, and there's always a famous one where he's so passionate about what he does and what he believes in. He's very emotional after giving such a powerful speech, and I think he's a brilliant person to listen to and watch.
That's great. We'll share that link for that show in the description.
So Jane, there's quite probably a common problem that people come across as coaches when you've got one player who's having that bad behaviour and it could disrupt a session. How would you handle that? So
there's a few different ways that I've dealt with that problem in the past. One is the pep talk to the whole group, reminding them of what the expectations are when they attend the session and the behaviours we expect to see from our players at the centre. There's the individual chats that we can have, and quite often they're quite impactful on the behaviour. Again, if the group are behaving well, but there's one little Bobby who is still misbehaving. Again, just pulling them out of the session, just having a quiet word with them. Sometimes you might have to do that with the player and the parent if need be, just to say, look, this is what you're doing. You need to improve that behaviour to help you learn more, and also help your other teammates learn more. If it persists, then you might have to sit that player out. A little thing I often do with young players, if I see their parent on the sideline, I say, Bobby, go and walk to that parent and then come back. Don't have to say anything to the parent, but then that parent will ask him after the session, why did you walk over there and then go back? And normally that trick works because they very slowly walk over to the parent. It's uncomfortable for them. Then they come back and they normally switch back on and they get on with the task. Those 3 things are a bit more reactive to when bad behaviour occurs in your session. What we try then to do is to prevent any bad behaviour from occurring. So one is they all know their expectations and code of conduct before they attend our sessions. The players and the parents and the coaches all know those high standards that we expect. But then it's our job as the coach to produce engaging practices for each kid. Quite often bad behaviour will happen when they're not challenged, when they're not engaged in what they're trying to do, and their mind will wander and try to entertain themselves. So if your practice design is good enough, and quite often what works is if you have goals in. If you have goals in your practice, kids love it. They're straight away, they're more focused, and they take part fully in that game. Another simple trick we've tried with a group of players who are known for, maybe out of 10 of them, 8 of them mess about. They're lying down on the floor every now and again. They're talking when the coach is talking. Now what we tried with this group is just to keep them engaged fully. So don't allow them any time where they have an opportunity to misbehave. So a simple trick we used was having a good supply of footballs on the side. They're playing their game, their practice, whatever it was. Let's say it was a 5v5, and whenever the ball went out, normally it would take a minute to get the ball back, and that's when you'll have a kid lying on the floor, another couple having a fight over in the corner. But during that time when they're going off to get the ball to bring it back for a throw-in, that's their opportunity to misbehave. So what we had was when the ball went off, forget that one, the next ball come in. So they didn't have time, straight away they're engaged again. And we found that they just got on with the football, the behaviour was very good. So that kept their focus for the whole game, and they really enjoyed it. And so not only did their behaviour improve, their performance improved as well. And again, we spoke about they come off sweating. So you could see they worked hard, whereas before they would have had time to mess about, not work hard, get distracted by other things. But by that simple trick of having footballs ready to feed onto the pitch, it got that focus for the whole session.
If you've got any questions about coaching, please put them in the comments below, and we'll answer them in our show next week. Thank you.
Thank you.